Hi, kids. Well, if anybody asks, I got an opinion about that. And I joke that, I got all the answers. I just keep waiting for the powers that be to ask me what to do, and they never do. So I'm a videographer, and I got a vlog and a podcast, and I decided, well, hey, I'll make a video. Here's my opinions. You want to fix America? I'll give you a list. Here's what you do. Now, let's lay down a couple of premises here. First of all, I do tend to be an optimist, and I believe in the power of the people and their wisdom, and I do believe in government. The government is not them, it's us. And if we actually get out and vote and have a good system, we can actually make some changes. And I think I know how to do that. Now, getting these in place is not going to be easy, but that's not the point. Here's what you do. I know what to do. All right, here we go. As I go through this list, a lot of people are going to say, well, that's going to cost money. Taxes. Oh, no, taxes. Well, what we found is that what it seems to be is that people don't mind paying taxes if they feel like they're getting their money's worth. Here in Minnesota, it was like, we're overtaxed, one of the highest tax states ever. Well, in 2008, we actually had to make it a constitutional amendment because the legislature wasn't listening. So we raised our sales tax by, I think, 0.3%, and it goes to outdoor, and most of it goes to the outdoor and wildlife and so forth, and a good chunk of it goes to the arts. But 60% of the people voted for that because they wanted it, and if to listen to the legislatures, they'd say, oh, no, we can't raise taxes. Well, that's what it took. So I don't think that people just automatically refuse to raise their taxes. If it goes to something good and they know they're going to get something good out of it, they'll do it. So I come from that perspective. I think none of this matters unless we take care of the money in politics. It is a poison that is ruining our system. We have to put some reforms in place to take the money out of politics. Now, the Citizens United thing that says that money equals speech is just absolutely wrong. And I also come from the perspective that we have our rights, but none of them are absolute. There are always restrictions on our rights. And just because they're in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights doesn't mean they're absolute. And we, as reasonable people, get to decide where those limits are. And so that's what I am proposing. Get the money out of politics. Now, I'll leave it to smart people to figure out exactly how to do that. But I would say that campaigns need to be self-funded, and there should be limits on how much you can spend. If you as a citizen want to promote a candidate, you have to donate the money to that candidate. The candidate must appear in every ad, print or online or on TV, and say, I am so-and-so, I approve this message. You can't get this dark money out of here. It is wrong. And the problem is the people in charge of the system are in charge of changing the system. I don't know how you change that. We go light a fire under them. And part of this is it's kind of like a football game. Figure a football game. The rules aren't fair. The winner gets to make the rules, but the loser thinks I may win at some point, and then I'll be in charge. That's you wouldn't run a football you wouldn't run a football league that way, but that's the way we run our politics. That's just wrong. That's just wrong. So got to get that money out of there. And who wants to see more ads? Despite what some people say, our system for voting and counting the votes in this country is amazingly robust, secure, and honest. We need to keep that, but I could see some election reforms. Who decided the second Tuesday after the first Monday or whatever it is in November? Well, that's because we had to get our harvest in or something. I don't know what it was, but it doesn't make sense anymore. We should go to mail-in or online voting. It can be made secure. But those who want to vote in person, you get to do that. But let's move it to September or somewhere where the weather isn't as likely to be bad. We can do this. Just because it's always been that way doesn't mean we can't change it. But honest, robust voting where everybody's vote counts one, that's the way to do it. And we can do this. We know how to do it. We just need to get the right people in charge and make it happen. Here's when I get arguments about term limits. But I'm right on this. We need term limits. And the argument is that, well, you can term limit them, just vote them out the next time. Well, the problem is once they get in, they get more power and they can run forever and ever and ever. And that is not right. But once our team wins, then we'll have our person in there and we want them to stay. Well, that's just not the way to look at it. Term limits keep things fresh. It keeps these politicians on their toes. You know, they're not leaders. They are followers. And they need to follow us. Okay, I don't know how many terms is too much. I'm kind of thinking 3. First term, you know, you're kind of learning things. Second term, you're maybe getting things done. The third term, it's amazing how courageous these people get once they know they're not running for re-election. Then they get things done. I'm throwing it out there, 3 terms, that's fine. Maybe that's 6 in the House, 18 years in the Senate. I think that's the way to get things done. Too much power is not good no matter what side you're on. Gerrymandering. I mean, they're actually saying this, elect me so once our party's in, we can draw the district so we'll always win. That's just wrong, and I don't care what side you're on. And there are states that do have nonpartisan boards that can actually set these districts so that they're fair. We have to do that. Fix the filibuster. Can you get rid of it? I don't care. You know, they say, well, here's what you do. You have to stand up and speak. You actually have to hold the floor of the Senate. If you can't do that, if it's just a threat, we need 60 votes to move ahead, that's just nonsense. Does it empower the party that's, it's just wrong. It's just a stupid idea. It's a stupid system. If you want to have the filibuster, you stand up and talk like Mr. Smith or get out of the way. I want to see some real gun regulation reform. I'm not anti-gun, but, you don't even need a permit to carry these days. We're awash in guns. No wonder we got a lot of crime. People shooting each other over the stupidest things. Some reasonable. Okay, what's reasonable? Nobody wants to give an inch because then we'll take a mile. When in Minnesota here a few years ago, we were discussing gay marriage before the Supreme Court decision, and people were saying, well, if we allow 2 guys to get married, the next thing you know, some guy's going to want to marry his motorcycle. And okay, maybe I don't know of anybody that thinks that's a reasonable argument, but if somewhere down the road they want to have that discussion and say men should be allowed to marry their motorcycles, I'd be opposed to that. I don't know of anybody who'd be in favor of it, but, we can have the discussion later. We're not having that discussion now. Right now, we're discussing some reasonable gun reform regulations and reasonable. I don't know what reasonable is. For me, it's getting rid of automatic weapons or semi-automatic weapons. You don't need that. Some reasonable background checks and so forth. That sounds reasonable to me. As I said before, we have our rights, but none of them are absolute. They cannot be. When I talk about voter reform, campaign reform, you could say, well, that's limiting my free speech. Maybe, maybe not. How about gun control or some kind of regulation? Okay, and people will jump to the end and say, we're going to come and take away your guns. Then I don't know of any reasonable person that's saying that. Let's find something reasonable and get away from this, no, it's either all or nothing. Either everybody's packing or the government comes door to door and takes all your guns. Come on. We're smarter than that. We're better than that. We can do this. Get rid of the semi-automatic, whatever. I mean, you should have to have some kind of a license to own guns or whatever. I don't know what's reasonable. Let's figure that out. But get rid of the hyperbole. I mean, the Second Amendment was written back when there were muskets. We didn't have a standing army. And what part of well-regulated don't you get? I mean, we can do some sort of reasonable reform here. We can do this. We have to. Healthcare. Oh, for crying out loud, why can't we do healthcare? When I was working, we'd have a meeting once a year. All our managers would get together, and we all had to deal with the health care for the next year. What a waste of time. It's just dumb. Listen, the rest of the civilized world, even uncivilized world, has some sort of nationalized health care. Some are better than others. Not one of them is considering going back to a U.S.-style for-profit system. Okay? We can do this. And let me tell you this. Anytime you see a poster for, hey, we're having a spaghetti dinner fundraiser for Bob who's got cancer and he's in debt, I want you to see that as our healthcare system is it is totally broken. People are making massive amounts of money where I think they shouldn't. Capitalism is great, but it doesn't work for healthcare. Does it drive out inefficiencies? Probably to some extent. But other people are getting rich because they have to have healthcare. And what can you do? And I don't have to sell you on how broken our system is. We've all heard the stories. It's happened to you. Let's fix this, people. Come on. Some sort of a national, reasonable healthcare. And it covers glasses and your teeth. Because I don't know about you, but my teeth and my eyes are part of my body. Childcare. We've got to fix childcare. We need some, because you can't fix unemployment unless you fix housing and childcare. They all go together. So I've been told by people who know what they're talking about. We have to do this. It makes sense. And speaking of housing, I'm way out of my league on this, but from what I hear, there's just a lot of goofy, old-fashioned regulations on housing not allowing us to build enough multifamily homes and so forth. Yeah, we wanted big lawns in leafy suburbs. That's nice, but it doesn't make a lot of sense in some instances in a modern world. We need to build more housing. We absolutely have to if we're going to house workers. Speaking of unemployment, let's talk about immigration. We hear people say, oh, the Democrats want open borders, let them all in. Well, that's just nonsense. But apparently it's a system that riles the base of both parties, or I don't know what it is. I don't know why we can't fix this. That guy said that, well, they're coming in hordes of whatever. There are, child molesters and rapists and drug dealers and all. That's just crap. You know what? That is just such. We need to realize that these are human beings, and we need workers. And here are people that in a lot of people's minds are just the poorest of the poor. But no, a lot of them are educated. They want to work. They're motivated. Why can't we have a system in place where people can actually get into the country legally? Why not? We need to do that, people. Come on. Let's talk about our tax system. Okay? They keep saying they want to lower taxes on the rich so they'll provide the job creators. And we've had 40 years of this, and it does not work. We tried it, didn't work. It's not theoretical anymore. What happens is that the rich get more money. And listen, I don't care how many billions of dollars you have, you're not going to build a factory and employ people if nobody's buying the product you're manufacturing. What has to happen is that the people, the middle class, folks like you and me, have enough money that we can go out and buy stuff. And believe me, if the rich need a factory to build stuff so we can buy it, they're going to find the money. A strong and robust middle class is what is going to make this country really thrive. So let's talk taxes. I think the more you make, the more you pay. So, some kind of a percentage system makes sense. I think the lowest pay 0. And as you make more, it gradually goes up. Because what you don't want is somebody to say, oh, I'm going to make $1 more this year. I don't want the raise because it's going to put me, they're going to take more of it in taxes. Well, so how about a really gradual system up to a point? And if you're making enough money, you pay your taxes. It's a good thing to do. You need to do it. So let's find a tax system that makes sense and stop listening to the people who are trying to scare you. And we need to make sure that people pay their taxes. So I remember in Greece a few years ago, they just had an economic collapse because nobody was paying taxes. The general feeling was that only a fool pays taxes. Well, you can't run a country like that. You have to pay your tax. But if you think everybody else is getting away with it, you're going to try the same thing. No, we need a system so everybody knows that everybody's paying their fair share. Somebody talked about a value-added tax, which, I'm beyond what I know, but it seems to make sense. You take in raw iron and you make steel out of it. And so there's a value added. Some tax goes to the government. And then whoever buys the steel then pays some tax. And the person takes the steel and makes something out of it. Value is added. Some tax goes. Nobody can cheat that kind of a system. So a value added along the way seems to make some sense to me. But you know what? Elect smart people and they'll figure it out. I want to see a country where nobody goes hungry and nobody's homeless. So the poorest of the poor are never going to go hungry and nobody needs to be homeless. Oh, do some of them, it's their own fault? Yeah, maybe. But listen, I'm not a real good Christian, but I remember reading about this Jesus guy, and he would have said, feed them and house them, even if they don't deserve it by your standards. And just don't let them die, for crying out loud. What does it take to, make people realize that, no matter who you are, you deserve food and some housing? I think we need to fully fund education. And here's some people think it's just wasted and so forth. I really dislike the idea of vouchers. Until we fully fund, truly fully make a robust public education. If you want voucher, if you want to take some of your money and start your own school and it meets standards, you go right ahead and do that. I'm just fine with that. But we're going to fully fund public education first. And there seems to be this idea that teachers are just overpaid babysitters. No, these are serious professionals, and you've got your children out there. It's important that we have true public education. Our judiciary system should not be political. States that have a partisan judiciary are a disaster. Let's take that away if they are, and make sure the states that are not have a political judiciary never go there. One of the stupidest things anybody on the left has ever said was defund the police. And because okay, I'm just not going to say any more about that, but we do need reform. I know some cops, terrific. I've met a few cops that are just like, you should not be out here. And we need to seriously change who gets to get into law enforcement at some level. And we need to change some of that thinking. So it's a lot of training. And some of these cops, the beginning cops, are not making a lot of money. And I don't think a lot of them are really well trained starting out. Some are, some aren't. But man, you have the power to take away my freedom. You better know what you're doing. So let's look at reforming that. I think a lot of the big cities were kind of militarized over the years, and it was an us and them thing. I think a lot of the discussion that's happening around police reform is good, and we need to pursue that without coddling criminals or being soft on crime. We can do this. We're smart. Recycling. We have this idea that recycling apparently has to pay for itself. Well, that's just short-sighted. We need to truly recycle, and if it brings back some money, great, but it's still better than throwing it in landfills. We need to do that. I'm getting down on the list here, but it doesn't mean that these are less important. I think we need to switch to the metric system. I'll know we've finally evolved as a country when we switch to metric. It makes so much sense. It is so easy. You're afraid of it? Go spend a couple weeks in Canada or in Europe where they use it, and it just gets to be second nature to you after a couple weeks. It is so easy. Quit being afraid of metric. The rest of the world figured it out. I think we need a system that will more allow third parties. Right now, the system is set up for this party, and that's it. It just does not allow a third party. And I saw a piece on TV the other day where there was some folks who were proposing some changes to our system that would allow for a third party. I don't remember who they were or what they were proposing, but I think it makes some sense. People get pretty upset with the two parties. And listen, nobody gives up power willingly. And we've got two parties, and they're just going to fight back and forth, and they get to be all about themselves. Competition is good. A third and fourth party is the capitalist system of democracy. Let's do that. Okay, those are my big list. If anybody's still watching, I got a couple other things. I've been visiting some of our national parks the last few years, and I love them. They're great, but they're way overcrowded, too much traffic, and it's just... So here's what you do. Cars are banned in national parks. You have to park outside unless you're driving a trailer into a campsite, but you cannot drive around the park. What we have is a system of mass transportation, hydrogen, electric, buses, whatever, and they run everywhere all the time. So you don't have all these cars, and you don't need the parking lots and all that. And they run so often that you don't need to look at when the next one's coming. You just stand and there's a bus coming and it'll take you places. That's what you do with national parks. Park the cars on the outside and mass transit on the inside, and not diesel buses. Now, I was up in Glacier a couple years ago. Huge amounts of that park are just inaccessible unless you're a hiker. Now, stay with me here. I want to see more roads in Glacier. And with some buses, we could do that without ruining the park. There's a lot to see in Glacier. Man, it's a great park, but there's only a couple roads. So that's my proposal on Glacier. I would like to see all the fees dropped. I would like to see more people in parks and state parks too. Let's make them, maybe not free, but really cheap. People need to get out and visit these parks. They're terrific. And I think a lot of the infrastructure has been underfunded for decades because it's an easy thing to cut when we have to cut. So let's get in there. Let's build and rebuild these parks and reimagine them and get everybody out there visiting the parks. We can do that one. That one's pretty easy. I want to see fiber optic to every home in America. Almost every home. I'm sure there are some that are 50 miles from the nearest whatever. But 99.9% fiber optic. In my house here, I've got cable running in here. The internet is spotty, and come on, man, that is not how modern society functions. We can do better than that. And the last thing on my list is get rid of the damn penny. Pennies are absolutely useless. We don't need them. They cost money, maybe even nickels. I don't know, but pennies for sure. They're just dumb, and we keep making them because we've always made them. Now, people in Illinois have to have Lincoln on the penny. Listen, you got the $5 bill. Let it go. Get rid of the penny. All right. Now, I doubt there's anybody listening or watching at this point, but for those if by chance there's anyone still watching, if you've got an opinion, make your own video. I don't want to hear about it. Leaders, followers, elected officials, listen to me, do what I say, and we're going to be okay. Be good. Take care.